to be able to lift off today, but
something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
The other thing to look at is at T-minus 6 seconds, we begin lighting the engines. Up on your monitor, you can see there, T-minus 40 seconds. We did hit the 40-second hold point, and they are holding for a moment. In the end, they will release that hold. We'll go the last 30 seconds. But yes, when we do get to day of launch, the last thing to look at is in the last 6 seconds, light the Raptor engines in succession. So unlike Falcon 9, we're going to have to do that a little longer. We're hearing right now the clock is going to hold here at T-minus 40 seconds. The Super Heavy and Starship are looking good. So with that, Kate, it's been a fast-paced morning. We got through it fairly quickly. But at this point, we're going to have to call it a morning.
Yeah, that's right. So for those of you that have recently just joined us, we unfortunately have
the integrated tasks that are going to set us up for success in a future attempt later on, hopefully in the next 48 hours or so. And Kate, it's also worth mentioning here, we're still going to take the count through to a pretty around the T-minus 10 second mark. So we're really going to exercise everything that we would up until that point in the vehicle states and ground procedures.
Yeah, it's like we said before, any data that we can collect today is super helpful. And that's exactly what we're doing. We are continuing to collect this data and allow the teams to have be better informed for the next attempt. Unfortunately, due to the needing to recycle the propellant, we are looking at a minimum of 48 hours until we are able to attempt this flight test again. So we're not quite sure what that timing will be at the moment, but we're looking at a minimum of 48 hours at this point in time. But Shiva, exactly as you said, things look a little bit different on launch day. And we allowed the countdown to do its job, to basically get to this point, to allow the teams to work through the issues. And we're going to continue, like we said before, we're going to continue all this down all the way to T-minus 10 seconds. And that will really allow the teams to pretend like this is launch day and continue and gather that data.
Yeah, Kate, on the one hand, it's a little bittersweet. On the other hand, we watched them go all the way through. First stage propellant load, just now wrapping up. The second stage, even the header tanks up under the nose of the Starship that you can see on the monitors. Actually, that all went very well today. The weather was excellent. Everything was looking good. Sadly, we just have the one issue, but that is letting the team continue to count down. And we're going to continue with it here until we get the clock hold at T-minus 10 seconds.
Yeah, so for those of you that have just joined us, we're now at T-minus 1 minute and 30 seconds to what would have been the launch of our Starship flight test. But unfortunately, due to a stage 1 issue, we are going to utilize today as a wet dress rehearsal. Instead, we are not going to attempt launch. The teams are basically saying that we're scrubbing our launch attempt for today, and we are expecting a minimum of 48 hours in order to recycle. So it's all good news, though. There's nothing really to be sad about other than we had hoped to be able to lift off today, but that's okay.
Now, one thing to point out for folks, when we do come back, when we clear this and we fly, one of the things you'll hear in the last minute, you won't be hearing us because we'll be listening to the countdown. But at T-minus 30 seconds, that's when the flight director would give the final go for launch. Love to have heard that this morning, but something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
The other thing to look at is at T-minus 6 seconds, we begin lighting the engines. Up on your monitor, you can see there, T-minus 40 seconds. We did hit the 40-second hold point, and they are holding for a moment. In the end, they will release that hold. We'll go the last 30 seconds. But yes, when we do get to day of launch, the last thing to look at is in the last 6 seconds, light the Raptor engines in succession. So unlike Falcon 9, we're going to have to do that a little longer. We're hearing right now the clock is going to hold here at T-minus 40 seconds. The Super Heavy and Starship are looking good. So with that, Kate, it's been a fast-paced morning. We got through it fairly quickly. But at this point, we're going to have to call it a morning.
Yeah, that's right. So for those of you that have recently just joined us, we unfortunately had a hold on the countdown today, and that is going to scrub our launch attempt. But we are excited.
Or cancel the test altogether as if a boat enters the safety perimeter. Now, over my shoulder is the Gulf of Mexico, which is normally very open to all of the boaters and fishers. However, today, SpaceX is closely coordinating with the United States Coast Guard to establish a safe zone and ensure public safety. And up to T0, SpaceX is in regular communication with the Coast Guard to ensure there are no boats in the area leading up to the launch. Now, fingers crossed that does not happen. Now, I'll throw it back to the folks at Hawthorne as we get closer and closer to that T-0. To all of the boaters and fishers, however, today, SpaceX is closely coordinating with the United States Coast Guard to establish a safe zone and ensure public safety. And up to T0, SpaceX.
We're just inside T-minus 9 minutes and counting. We're listening on one of the background loops right now. Flight director is talking about the issue we've had on first stage, working the pressurization system. Decision right now is that we are going to stop the launch for today. We're going to transition the launch attempt to a wet dress rehearsal. So that means we're going to continue with the countdown sequence of events. We'll continue loading propellant, finishing up here shortly on the second stage. We'll also continue loading propellant onto the first stage, wrapping up at T-minus 3 minutes. We're also going to go through pressurization steps, other steps of the countdown. This will be a full validation for the team, but currently the plan right now is we're waiting for final word, is that I think at T-minus 10 seconds, we will finally stop the clock and then recycle the countdown for today. Now we're inside T-minus 8 minutes and counting. We're continuing to load propellant on both the first and second stage. You can see the Starship second stage with the heat shield tiles there. Carriage arms are open. You can see the condensation around the first stage tank as we load liquid methane, liquid oxygen into the large super heavy first stage. Now that propellant loading is continuing until T-minus 3 minutes. As a reminder, and there's our great view looking up at the Raptor engines, the 33 engines. There's an outer ring of 20 engines, and then there's an inner set of 13. Those are the engines that can gimbal and adjust the course of the Starship vehicle on the way up. And of course, the first stage as it comes back down towards the water landing in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, when both stages are loaded, you can see the condensation frost on the side of the first stage. We'll have just over 10 million pounds of liquid propellant on board. Inside T-minus 7 minutes, we're continuing to count. Team is preparing for the hold and scrub at T-minus 10 seconds.
There's always potential issues, but it was quite interesting to see. I know that SpaceX has their own version of the red team. I don't know what they call them, but we see these trucks go out at the pad, sometimes when it still has prop or other cryogenics in the vehicle, and they will adjust the valves specifically on the fuel farm. So it's quite an interesting comparison there. We obviously didn't see any of those guys come out today, but the issue seems to be inside the vehicle and not, a ground surface or serviceable ground equipment, for instance.
Thomas, I have a question for you, actually.
Yeah.
Any idea where on the booster on the Super Heavy this valve may be located for, do you know, or anyone else on the team? And would this potentially require a D-stack or anything like that?
So what it would probably be, if I'm guessing right, would be a valve that would not be just the... it's actually one of many valves, but if it's going to be one of the valves, I think it would be... it would probably be on the top of the vehicle as far as the LOX tank. So, or actually the midsection. So I didn't see one of the valves open up today for basically venting, and that would be very useful. So if it's that pressurization issue, it's like it's not able to open up a valve just to detank or depressurize. That would be a big problem to have if the vehicle's starting to overpressurize and you need more flow. That's going to be an issue. There's valves up there. That kind of is one of my more likely suspects because it is a butterfly valve, and it would be the towards the beach side, I suspect, because I haven't seen any real venting coming off in that direction. Otherwise, it would have to be at the bottom of the tank, where like 90% of the other valves are.
Well, Thomas, the other thing is if it's a pressurization issue, we don't know whether it's an overpressure or an underpressure. So it could be a leaky valve, which we haven't seen any exhaust from, or it could be a stuck valve that would hold in pressure, which gave them too high a pressure temperature or pressures. And at the same time, if it's overpressure, I'm sure there's pressure relief pop valves that would also depressurize the vehicle if